This is the Gospel Revolution.
Since you're knocking on the door, you're begging to come in, yeah. Unaware that all the while love's been knocking from within. You are the love you see, a perfect yet unique, righteous, holy.
Here's the founder and president of the Gospel Revolution, Michael Lilborn Williams.
Good morning, Daniel Thomas Rouse. You almost forgot your middle name.
Daniel Thomas Rouse.
DTR.
When I used to travel with Larry, he used to call me Bishop Rouse.
Bishop Rouse.
Bishop.
Yeah. BDTR. BDTR.
So back in the Word of Faith days, did you have a fancy title?
No. I didn't. The bishop thing, that was a segment of the Word of Faith movement that I was around, of course, and Buddy Harrison, and I think those guys kind of evolved into that. Buddy Harrison was Kenneth Hagin's son-in-law, Kenneth Hagin Sr.
That's who Larry worked with. Him,
Yes.
Buddy, and Larry were the ones that started FCF.
Yes, and I've spoken at that church, and I know that's where Larry Huggins had encountered me even before that, and of course Pat Hagin is the one who married Buddy Harrison, and that was Harrison House, the publishing company. Many of you will remember those books. And I remember speaking there. And of course, these guys prophesied over not just everybody, but everything.
Yeah.
And they rhymed. Remember how they rhymed? Yeah. So I had delivered my testimony. So this has been, it is 40 years ago for sure, somewhere around there. I don't know. Buddy Harrison got up, and there were several steps. If you've ever been in that church, there's about 7 or 8 steps up to the podium. And so he called me back up after, and he started prophesying, and he was standing on this step and that step. And he prophesied that I think he didn't really like this very much. I think it kind of impeded on some masculinity issues for him. And anyway, he prophesied that this testimony would be minuscule compared to the testimony that I was going to have. And I thought, how dare you belittle my testimony like that by saying I'm going to get a greater one. But anyway, no, these are all memories. Daniel and I are out of the same cloth, folks. And of course, Daniel wasn't even cloth when I started, but he wasn't even a little bitty thread. No, I'm not going to start that on you again.
Not yet, anyways.
Yeah. So, but thank you, Daniel Thomas Rouse, for welcoming me. And gosh, what will we do without our Daniel? This has been, oh, wow. We have to stop and breathe to just try to conceive of where we are, what we've done, what we're doing. We have now, I don't know. It's just, how do you feel having wrapped up the 1,000-year reign, Daniel?
I was, again, just a couple of days thinking about it, and I'm in awe. And I'm in awe. I am so happy to finally actually have an understanding of true scriptural eschatology. Yeah. Isn't it something? I mean, that was always the topic, even as a pastor, I shied away from. I didn't really preach much on the second coming of Christ or the millennial reign. That's the 1,000-year reign of Christ. I didn't preach on the Antichrist and all that stuff. I really shied away from it because I didn't understand it. now I'm happy I do. And now I want to go preach those messages.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, Victor Brennan wants to go preach them.
Yeah.
He said, I didn't even know what eschatology was, and now I can teach on it.
Esca who?
I can carry on a conversation with anybody about anything that they say about anything about eschatology. And but it is incredible once you place something in its right place, everything else falls into place.
Yeah.
And that's all we did. We had hints. We taught. We got the understanding that the cross was the finishing point, but we didn't have all the answers because everything had been predetermined for us as to what to think. We knew it wasn't true, but we knew the cross was the reason it wasn't true. But boy, that day, you will mark it the rest of your life, Daniel. The day I looked up at you and said, so Paul puts firmly that the end is here in 1 Corinthians chapter 15. He says the 1,000-year reign ended when death was swallowed up. So death was defeated. I remember us having a little conversation. Is there any chance that death is not defeated altogether? And we both reaffirmed our understanding of the gospel. So now we have the end. This is the end. Now, which way does the string go? And I happened to ask Daniel, well, look and see what's 1,000 years before. And bam, that is a historic moment in the gospel revolution. And me looking up in Daniel's eyes, look around his saucers, and he said, it's Psalms 110:1, the beginning of the reign of David.
Wow. And, I had, for my doctorate degree, my thesis that I wrote was The Great Apocalypse. The end was just the beginning. And
wow.
This was so I'm simultaneously getting my doctorate degree from a Word of Faith seminary. I'm also listening to Michael and Don like every day. And as this is converging, I'm writing my 120-page thesis paper. And I decide to write on the day of the Lord. And
oh my God.
Of course, what I wrote was, also along that line is the Mirror Bible. Oh my God. When I found that Mirror Bible, I ate it up. I was a Mirror Bible promoter. I was giving Mirror Bibles to everybody in my church. I mean, I ordered, I think at one point, like 25 or 30 Mirror Bibles and handed them out to people in my church. And because I seen this conclusion of that all were made righteous, and certainly is a theme that he has in the Bible, but how he gets to that point, that's what we have come to learn. And now I'm not a fan of the Mirror Bible, but I was thinking about that paper the other day, and I think, oh my gosh, I wish I had the time now. I had so much time back then being a pastor. I wish I had the time now to go sit and rewrite that paper, because imagine merging all of those into the book with the 1,000-year reign of Christ. And Michael, the one thing I was thinking about, and even as I was writing it, I thought the weak part of this paper is I didn't really come to a conclusion with all of the, that everyone will die, the blood that will be up to the horse's neck and all that kind of stuff. I showed that Christ was the fulfillment of all that judgment. But to have the new thing that we learned in the 1,000-year reign of Christ, that all of that was cut off, that's the chapter that's missing from that book for sure.
It's the chapter missing from every book, Daniel. And I clicked on our Facebook page just yesterday, and Mario Murillo, you remember the name?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Mario Murillo has carried a very heavy teaching voice in the Word of Faith movement, and others. There's many people that listen to Mario Murillo. And a very wonderful graphic came up with his face right in the middle of it. And the big title across it was "The 3.5 years The last 3.5 years is coming.
Oh, really? Oh my gosh.
And he had like 100 and something comments. And so I had to comment. And I said, I'm not sure when you guys are ever going to listen to Jesus and Paul and Daniel.
Yeah.
The last 3.5 years were cut off. And I put it in capital letters. And I said, I don't know if you just choose not to listen. I don't know what the issue is, but the 3.5 years, Jesus said that except it were cut off, that no flesh would be saved. And Jesus said that, which Lisa's now beginning to get irritated with us for using the name Jesus. So she's so learned about the fakery of that name, and we embrace that. We are going to begin to adjust that also for very good, solid reasons. But so, and I said, and besides that, I said, Jesus said, now is the judgment of this world. Why are you saying it's still yet to come? So anyway, I said, I know you're going to delete this. I know you're going to, but maybe somebody will read it before you do.
Yeah.
And, I went on about my day because,
yeah.
But the GRs, those of you listening, and we are the most fortunate people on planet Earth. I know those of you that I talk to, you even feel that. You know that. You know how all-encompassing, what a unified field of understanding. For something to be a unified field of understanding, it has to be able to address every question. It must address every tension. It must address every contradiction. It must be The answer must be able to transcend from the beginning to the end. You have a unified field of understanding of theology, the first one on planet Earth. They all admit they're not a unified field. And we know, even artificial intelligence now knows that the gospel of peace and the gospel of grace is a unified field of understanding for theology.
Michael, the last Word of Faith service that I was in, I was listening to the preacher, and it was a lady preacher who actually used to be a Rhema grad. And every other thing that she said, I felt it was revolved around money. God's going to restore your money. God's going to make you rich, and so on and so forth. And I thought about how sad it is that they have belittled, and I really mean that, belittled the gospel down to a prosperity message. And don't get me wrong, I'm not against prosperity. Go get rich, go do all that.
Or send us your money. That's what they're
come
really
on,
saying,
bring it in, sow that seed. But Michael, and I was in that. You and I were in that. I mean, that was part of the Word of Faith, was this prosperity message. We held hold on it, and we talked about sowing seeds and all of that. By the way, it doesn't work, in case you're wondering. And it works for you if you're receiving the offering, but everyone else it doesn't work for. But Michael, we stand here with understanding of the gospel, of the 1,000-year reign of Christ, of the completed work of the cross. And we don't preach messages on getting rich and using these so-called biblical principles of financial prosperity. We stand and teach you that the work of the cross is complete, that you are righteous, holy, blameless, sinless. I have that understanding in my heart. I know that beyond a shadow of a doubt. I know that I am righteous. And Michael, that is the richest message. And when you say that us GRs are the most fortunate people in the world, I believe that we are, we are rich. We are rich in truth. We are rich in understanding. We are rich in righteousness. Well, the whole world is rich in righteousness, but we know it. And I'm thankful for that, and so glad to be out of that. But Michael, here we stand at the end of the 1,000-year reign of Christ series. But here Michael and Daniel and the Gospel Revolution, we are moving at light speed. And I say that comically because that'll play into what we're talking about today.
Tongue in cheek.
We are moving at light speed, and we're about to open up a new door. Michael, where in the world are we headed now? We're not taking a breath. We're not stopping. We're moving on from the 1,000 year reign of Christ. Of course, that's going to be included in everything that we do. But what is next?
Well, it is. So I'm all ready to say this for the very first time on planet Earth, and what I do. And that's kind of where we are, folks. It is just, this is bigger than big. It's larger than large. It's humongouser than humongous. And we are going to change the world. So what we have done is that we have come up with a plan. Now, the plan evolved as we were doing our learning. So the plan is that we are going to build a bridge that is going to give the entire world a bridge to come back across to find the gospel. We are no longer trying to reach the world. Now, remember, those were never commands anyway. Stop and think about this. We are about to rewrite we're about to replace, because they needed to be replaced. All of the Great Commissions are pseudographical. Jesus never said, go into the world and preach the gospel. Bam! There's your bomb. Everybody expects a bomb, right? So it's just hit. No, there is no instruction to go preach the gospel to the world from Christ. It's not there. Now that just needs to settle, pedal,
Yeah.
So can it be done some other way? Yes, and we have found it. We are building a bridge to every Christian denomination, every person that believes there is a God, every person that is of any persuasion that science is real, and they rely on scientific evidence. We are building a bridge for the world to come to the gospel revolution. We don't have to take the gospel revolution to them. So what we're asking is that you listen intently. If you have to listen to this show on the go, that's quite all right. But please don't think that you caught everything you needed to hear by listening while you were doing or in conversation with somebody else. You must get alone. You must listen to this with somebody, but the intent must be to listen, because you cannot miss any part of this. There is so much to learn. I would say, now let me lay this out clearly. We just finished 50 sessions, but I am guesstimating that with the information we have in hand, I would say we have about 500 sessions to go through now. It is, and it's all tied. All of it is, let me reassure you, we're not leaving the gospel to go teach something else. This is the gospel.
That was going to be my question.
Yes, this is the gospel. And the framework of the gospel has opened the world to us. So Paul said that if we just look at nature itself, it would teach you the gospel. Now, that has always intrigued me to the core for decades. And now we have found Paul's key, bigger than Paul ever knew the key. But the key has never changed. The paradigm has never changed. We're going to be teaching you about nature. Now, you say, well, physics, what is physics? Physics is that big theoretical thing nobody can understand. Thanks for playing. That is not physics. Physics is defined by that which occurs naturally. Physics is defined by that which occurs naturally. Now, if you misinterpret what physics is showing you, everything about physics is seeable, knowable, repeatable. Seeable, knowable, repeatable. I'll go for my triune. Seeable, knowable, repeatable. And what has come is what is called theoretical physics. It is so. What is theoretical physics not? It is not seeable, it's not knowable, and it's not repeatable.
My goodness. I wanted to read that verse, and I think we read it to everybody a few weeks ago, but it's worth repeating. This is Romans chapter 1 and verse 20. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen. And we learned that means the invisible one. The invisible one is clearly seen. God is clearly seen. For since the creation of the world, the invisible one, God, is clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead. The internal power and Godhead are clearly understood by the things that were made, by creation.
By physics.
By physics.
Yes.
And then the last part of that, so you are without excuse.
Yeah, boy, are you ever without an excuse? And we're going to leave everyone with no excuse. I don't care who it is. I don't care what their title is. I don't care what their degrees are. We will leave you without an excuse. Because the gospel, the nature itself. See, all of that was a declaration of a term Paul didn't know. It's called physics. And Paul literally said, physics will teach you everything about God. So when people say, oh, they've left off the gospel and gone to teaching physics. Well, we have not left off the gospel. We are going to continually show you as we learn these principles. Paul implores us to learn this. This is part of the gospel. Paul established that physics is part of the gospel. Physics is the strongest teaching tool we have of God himself. You get confused about who God is and what he has done. Mirror Bible is completely confused about God. There is no physics. That's mysticism, folks. We are talking about science, hardcore, visible, knowable, repeatable science declares God.
Michael, listen to Psalm 19. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. Day unto day utters speech, and night unto night reveals knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. Their line has gone out through all of the earth, and their words to the end of the world.
That's why we've got 500 sessions in front of us. If learning is your passion, my friends, you are very fortunate to be a part of the gospel revolution, because learning is what we've always done, and it's what we are now about to put into the creation itself. Some of you have stuck to very nobly, and you have rejected that that theoretical science has the ability to explain God away. That's the difference. Theoretical science proves there is no God. There is no creator. Let me say that clearly. Theoretical science proves there is no creator. Real physics proves there is a God and a creator, but it also tells you all about him.
Come on.
So why physics, Mike? Because we have been implored by the one. He said he had been given the mystery of the gospel. He's the only one. Now, he just told us what part of that mystery was. Do you get it?
Mm-hmm.
Paul just told us how he understood the gospel. I can now see him being out in the desert, looking not only at the scriptures, but also looking at the things around him. And watching how the sun comes up, the moon does this, that moves this way, this moves that way. Look how the seed grows. Look how this happens and that happens. My God, it's a perfect picture of God himself. And it is the completed picture of the work of Christ. It is the completed work of the true gospel. Now, if the gospel were like what Christianity says, you would have stars spinning out of space. You would have the moon coming up sometime, but not all the time. You would have an eclipse that was late because it's all process and delay. And with the understanding of the gospel, the process and the delay is over. We have no process and delay. It is a completed work. It is a totality of a completed work. So everything about physics shows us the completed work. And then it shows us that it's completed because it is verifiable and it is repeatable. And it repeats itself by the second, by the minute, by the hour, by the day, by the month, by the year, by the thousands of years, to up to 6,000 years. It's all been a repetition. We used many years ago the fractal nature of the gospel. We're not leaving that. That's still the same thing, because one part of creation explains the other part of it. And if you define something in creation or even in physics, it throws everything off. Everything is off. Now, we're going to show you exactly where physics went wrong. And we've had some brilliant minds look at this. But folks, brilliant minds can think wrong things. Uneducated minds can think right things. The education does not define whether or not you can think right or wrong thoughts. Do not let someone tell you you cannot understand something because you do not have an education. We could go through 10 shows of just people who had no education who've changed the world with their thoughts and what they've learned. People who were not qualified, people who were marginalized, people who were excluded, all the way down the line. So we claim to have no education in any of this. There's no claims of education. But we are human beings. We understand the gospel, and we have thoughts that other people can't have, Daniel, because their thoughts are not guided by the simplicity of the nature of the gospel itself, and specifically the gospel of grace and the gospel of peace. Everything we teach you, you are going to find out that's the gospel of grace. That's the gospel of peace. That is the creator. That's all you're going to see. And if we ever do anything that does not make that picture bigger than you've ever seen it before, please let us know. We also entreat every single question. Please do not think that a question is too minute, that it's too picky, that it's a little sideline, but I don't see this over here. How you say that when this is that? We want those questions. And I promise you, we will address every one of them. Now, if you send it to us in email, is going to be the best way to organize this. And maybe we'll just have to do some sessions. We cannot miss a session on teaching this. Maybe we'll do a session, start doing sessions just on a mailbag, and we'll go through and answer those questions. Or maybe we'll be able to fold them into it. I don't know. But I want to answer your questions individually, quickly, and directly to you. We're not going to kind of farm it out in a general way. We're going to address every question to every person every time.
So we're taking on physics, Michael. Where do we begin?
Well, let's go with the number one physicist that has laws. What is the difference between physics that has been determined to be a law? That means that it is viewable, it is verifiable, and it is repeatable. So we have laws, and these are all Newtonian. Sir Isaac Newton. Sir Isaac Newton was the least likely person to ever be able to think like this. His father died 3 months before he was born in 1642 in December, Christmas Day. Great big Christmas present was given to the whole world in Newton. Newton was born premature. It was not expected to live. In fact, they were very surprised that this child lived. His mother raised him for 3 years and then met a wealthy preacher. Can't pass up a wealthy preacher. And she married him and abandoned her son, but to the care of her parents. This was not a good relationship. He grew up with a lot of conflict. He did not like his stepfather. He did not like his mother. He always had problems with abandonment issues. And because of the way that she did, he just could never, I don't know if he ever forgave her. But this was how the man's life started. His father's name was Isaac Newton, and because his father was dead, whether he would have gotten the name Isaac or not, if his father would have been alive, who knows? But definitely because a major influence in the reason that he was Isaac Newton is his father had died 3 months before his birth. So that's the child, and the as Lisa was sharing with me the other day, he studied the Hebrew Scriptures. The place that Isaac Newton studied the most to find the physics he found out. Daniel, are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
He studied the Hebrew Scriptures.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And that's where physics, the very first laws of physics were found. The laws of physics were found by Sir Isaac Newton in the Hebrew Scriptures.
Mm.
He was a Christian, a very tormented Christian. His Christianity was very confusing to him because he had all of this information, but he was trying to live by this governance of process and delay and all of this, where he had seen something so different in physics. And then I just can't even imagine. He had several breakdowns, mental and emotional breakdowns. We understand those breakdowns now because we all had them too, trying to resolve his beliefs with his knowledge. So that's just a basic. I would encourage anybody, if you find a Netflix on Sir Isaac Newton, if you're wanting to kind of stay up on this, then go to YouTube and click on anything you can find on Sir Isaac Newton and watch it. So we're giving you some homework to do. And you pull up your own information, share with us what you find, because we don't know it all. So Isaac Newton came up with the law of gravity. Now, the law of gravity says that it is instantaneous. Remember this word, instantaneous and immediate. Instantaneous and immediate. That means that everything that the moon does has an immediate and instantaneous reaction on the earth. No time delay whatsoever. The tides are pulled at the moment that the moon makes a change. Now, astronomy proves that. Astronomy knows this is a fact, that there is an instantaneous and immediacy about gravity. It doesn't do something and then someplace it takes time for that gravity to run down there and do that to the Earth or any other planet. And then to get to quickly the big picture, everything in space is governed, I don't want to say controlled, is governed by gravity. So everything that moves something else. Everything that does something else. And it is all instantaneous. If it were not, the universe would collapse on itself. Things would fall out of sync, and this would fall out, and that would be delayed. This would be delayed, but that wouldn't be delayed when that was delayed. And then suddenly you would just have things spinning off into oblivion. So what you're going to learn through theoretical physics is that Newton was wrong. But theirs is still theoretical, and Newton's is still law. They've never got theirs to be declared as law, the theory of space-time fabric, which is a delay, and they show gravity operating completely differently, even though there was nothing wrong with the way it was operating. We're going to show you the point where they started making the changes and why. We're taking you into the experiment. We're going to take you into the room. You're going to be there with Maxwell in 1916, and you're going to observe how he carried out these experiments with his telescopes and cameras from 1916, and found discrepancies in Newton's work. So Newton came up with the theory of the law. Please don't let me say that when I shouldn't. Came up with the law of gravity. It works. It is viewable. It is verifiable, and it is repeatable. It happens this way every time. That makes it a law. The other law that he came up with was the laws of motion. Now, the laws of motion talk about action and reaction. To every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction, and along those lines. We're not going to take you deep into that, but you need to know that these are laws that were established and verified by others. Everybody that tried it said, yes, this is, yep, boy, he's right, he's right. So the scientific minds at the time, such as the College of Science in England, verified these are laws. All right. And they're still operating. NASA still operates by Newtonian physics when doing a launch or anything else. Newtonian physics is still operational. And the laws of motion also, the firing of anything, exactly, you can measure exactly how something is going to move, what it is going to do, and what trajectory it's going to take because of Newton's laws of motion. All right. So I want you to see the two big E's that he had already settled on was gravity and motion. Law. All right. From that point, he also discovered a lot of things about optics. They're not considered laws, but he did a lot of things about optics and a wonderful research and intrigue. So he was studying light. This is where the divergence begins. He was studying light and he was amazed with light. He looked through the Hebrew scriptures to find everything he could about light. And then one day he picked up a prism and a glass that's cut with different angles in it and different geometric designs. And he held it up to a direct beam of sunlight. And on the other side of it, he saw what we call the full color spectrum. Now, this is not verifiable, what he decided. It is repeatable as far as experience, but the definition has to be correct. And but it can be a little deceptive because the same thing happens every time, but the cause can be misunderstood. So that is what happened. So he held this prism up and he determined that light travels and that light has color in it. And when it goes through this, the only thing that's happening is that the prism is separating the color into segments and showing it as color. Now, that is a reasonable conclusion. The problem is, if it's separating color, why doesn't the color show up in the light somewhere? There is no color in light. White light is white light is white light. So here's where you're going to begin to learn something different about light: the point of interaction. You're going to learn that light does not travel, even at the speed of light. That's why Daniel told you that's kind of tongue-in-cheek by saying at the speed of light. We are going to show you that this is a creation of God, and just like gravity, light is instantaneous and immediate. Light only exists at its source and the point of encounter, the point of interaction. So what about the prism then? The prism then we would define this way. White light is white light. And geometry of a prism causes that interaction to produce color. Color comes because the geometric design produces the color. It's not that the color is in the light. So like I've tried to wrap my mind around this for years, and it's just like I'm trying to get it, but it makes no sense. But I stated it because it was supposed to be a fact. So I'm sitting here looking at a painting of one of my ancestors with a red jacket on. She's a very famous figure in history, but it's a beautiful painting. But I was told that the only reason I see this red jacket is because that is the color that is being rejected by the pigment, and that it is absorbing all absorbing all other colors. But we know that light itself is not absorbed. Light can interact, it can refract, it can do a whole hell of a lot of things. But light does not go into something. The heat of the light, and you'll be learning about all different forms of, there's many different forms of light and the spectrum, but none of them go through something except in two particular cases, which we will cover those. They're very reasonable and understandable. Light does not absorb into something. It reflects, refracts, or the black is there, and that is just not an acknowledgement of color at all. So what we're saying happened is, when I'm looking at this painting, it's not that it has absorbed all other color and it's rejecting red, so that's coming back at me. The only thing that's happening is that the pigmentation is in a geometric construct and a certain type of build, where that when the light comes to it, the interaction of it reveals the red. Remember the term reveals. It's what it reveals. Light is a revealer. You can find that in scriptures all the time. Light, men don't like to come to the light because they love the darkness. Light is a revealer. Light does not absorb, as we have been taught. Now, and it's obvious that it does not. Do you see the light come through on the other side of a plate of steel, for God's sake? Yet you can feel the steel warmed up when it's in direct sunlight, but the sunlight itself has been presumed to do something magical. And that is that it penetrates, that it can go into something and be absorbed. That is not physics at all. So what Newton, an incredible man. He never married. He was so buried in his books. Yes, there were suspicions of his sexuality. Nothing can be said about that because nobody knows one way or the other. The most likely thing is that he was just a man so caught up in thought that he just didn't have time for this part of his being. Maybe he thought it was sinful. We know he thought it was sinful in every way except marriage. And there was no way he was going to get married, because what time do you have to get to know somebody, when you are establishing the laws of physics? So at this point, Daniel, are there any questions that you might have, or have you heard anything that we've not talked about previously? We're trying to keep up with this, but my heart goes out to Daniel because he's got a full-time job and takes care of his girls. And I am trying to throw this stuff at him as gently as I can, but we are both learning together. And so, Daniel, give me some feedback here. What do you think about what you've heard so far?
So you've laid out that Newton has produced this science, these sciences that have become law, but he had some theories as well,
Yes.
Such as specifically what you're talking about here is a light.
This was a theory.
My next question on the plate is, was there someone, or is there an equation that is pure theoretical that has become considered science in the physics world?
Yes. Now, there is one before Einstein, but the one that's known is Einstein, so we'll stick with that because it's the most prominent one. We have one that was established as some speed, but it was unknown speed. And there were attempts to measure the speed even in the 1600s.
And that's the speed of light you're referring to. Yes, the
speed of light, since it was determined to be a traveler. So what Newton did is he placed light in the same category as motion. See, he could have put it in the same knowable category as gravity, which what we are posing is that light goes in the same category as gravity. That it is instantaneous from its source to its interaction. Now, everything around you tells you this is true. Light is at its source and at its interaction. Space is dark. If light is traveling, we're going to go into the terms photon and all of this, but we're going to do it incrementally so that it can be understood and also so it can be questioned. You are to question us to death. If we succumb to questions, that will be a good thing. That means we're on the wrong path and we need to change our minds. Mm-hmm. We are not opposed to changing our minds. So, where is the equation that states around the globe that light travels? That is E, that's a big E, equals a small m, and a C, a smaller c than the m, and the C stands for light, and then a 2 right to the right and above it, right next to it. So C2 means light squared. So they came up with a speed of light. Now, this has been done in a couple of different ways. We're not going to overburden you with the ways, but they have been done at probably the most, quote, verifiable has been the one that was done in the, in this century. And they were at the space station. We can come up with the particular one. And they fired a laser after 1969 because they left a mirror on the moon. Now, this wasn't just, hey, get the mirror off the wall in the bathroom and put it out here. This thing is, it's big and it is very complicated. It is filled with cones and things kind of like the eye is. It almost represents an eye. If you look at the features that they say is in this, it's like an eye. And but it is designed to reflect. So it's an eye that does like the eye does. It has cones. It has the very same structure-like features that the eye has, at least as similar as they could get it. And they placed that on the moon in 1969. And then, of course, it was a couple of decades or more later that they fired this laser. And then it went from there, and I'll have to check my facts on it. I don't know that. I don't think it would not have possibly been able to go back to its source there because it was traveling, at 5,000 miles an hour. So they had to calculate the speed, and they knew predictably where the Earth is and would be, and so they calculated for that to reflect off of a very large mirror, a receptor here on Earth. So they defined that time from the time they fired that laser till the time that it hit the mirror and made it back to Earth. I believe it's exactly right to say 2.5 seconds. So what they did is they assumed, because light has never been measured in a one-way speed. It's just not possible. How are you going to do that? Everything has been called a theory. And let me tell you that what we're telling you now, everything about E equals mc squared is still theory. Newton's laws are still laws. But they've actually updated the dictionaries to tell you that theory is now science.
What?
Yeah. Not fair. Not fair, is it? Just not fair on any level.
So you're saying that theoretical physics has been accepted as
science.
Science, as a law.
Yes, it has been. Now, they will not say it's a law, but we know it's science.
Wow.
But it fails on every point of confirmable science. It is, number one, it is not viewable. It is not repeatable.
Mm.
It is not, there's no way that it is verifiable. And you will see how murky this actually gets. Now, if you think this part is murky, this murky produces murky produces murky. As you
Mm.
know, clarity produces clarity produces clarity. Anything that you find out and it leads to another answer that creates more questions than what you ever had, and way bigger, it was like, why not go back and check the source and see if our conclusions are wrong instead of continuing to build? So the people think that they have seen black holes. People think they've seen wormholes. People think that they observe red shifting, which they do observe something on that one, but it's how they define it. Remember, definition is everything. And is it repeatable? So the definition, it may happen that way every time, but you still have to have the proper definition of what's happening. Uh, Goodness, we could replay this in many ways and show you how that something can be happening. You could be wrong about why it's happening, and it still happened the same way every time. And then you find out, oh, wow, that's not what's causing that. Maybe you can do something about it now. Or maybe you just have to accept it. So the speed of light was then halved, because they said if it took this long to get there and this long to get back, that means part of the travel time was on the way to the mirror.
Mm.
So we divide it up and we say, okay, so the total travel time, including its trajectory to and its path back, equals 2.5 seconds. Now, that's a very short time for sure. 2.5 seconds to go all the way to the moon and back to the earth. That is an incredibly incremental amount of time. Now, because they designed this thing as an eye, we have to kind of incorporate what we know about the eye. So the thing that we know about the eye is it's the cones and all of the things that are involved. I'm not learning everything about the eyeball to try to explain this, but here's what we know about light encountering the eye encountering light. Did it travel to get to your eye, or is it just light is present? So, but what happens when it does encounter the eye, it goes through a process, and each step of that process delays that what you're seeing, delays it by a certain amount of milliseconds. And each process, when it goes through there, it delays it a certain This is science, and I can get that information to anybody who wants it. So the thing that we know, this is scientifically known, is that this interaction creates a delay. Now, the fantastic thing about our way that we are created is that the brain knows that delay, and it recalculates everything to where you are now able to see instantaneously what is delayed by the eye.
Wow.
Because the brain knows that the eyes cannot absorb this instantaneously. Now, we're talking about very small amounts of time. But when Daniel was down here, I found his dexterity to be remarkable. I mean, it was Newtonian, if you will. We were sitting here, and I was like, oh, my God, we let a fly in. I've never caught a fly in my life. I can barely hit one with a fly swatter. And so Daniel sat there really still, and he starts shifting his eyes back and forth, and it's like, what is this man doing? And the fly was going, ying, 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 ying. And all of a sudden, Daniel Thomas Routes reaches into the air in a flash. And I thought, he didn't catch that fly. There's no way. And he sat there, but he got up and he went to the bathroom so that, he's not going to open his hand to see whether he caught the fly or not. And he was able to get the fly, and he showed it to me. And it's like, I have Superman in my house. But see, Daniel would not have been able to do that based on the way the eye functions.
Mm-hmm.
Because the brain has to make up for the delay that encounter takes. When light strikes something, the interaction time, there is interaction time, and we know that. But let me tell you what they never considered while they were doing this test. They never considered interaction with the mirror.
Mm.
They dismissed it.
Wow.
The only reason anybody could find is because it might challenge their conclusions that they were trying to prove. Folks, when you're out to prove something, you will come up with confirmation bias, even if it's information that is going to change the way the world sees things.
Mm. So the little 2, the squared, is taking the speed of the observable interaction from one mirror to the other and dividing it into 2.
Yes.
Why is C? Why isn't it L for light?
Well, he just decided that C was going to stand for light. That's the thing about equations. I'm glad you brought that up. Please don't feel the intellectual challenge that people who use equations want you to feel. Many people, especially in theoretical physics, they want you to be intimidated by these equations. And therefore, it's going to limit the questions. But I'm telling you, all you have to do is learn a little bit. You have to learn what the C means. So like Daniel said, so why the C? We could probably find out why, but the actual answer is, to Einstein, C is light. He could have put a B. He could have put a little asterisk and said that's light. But they see, you've got to know the definitions of the different parts of the equation, the different figures that are used, and it is what they say it is. Right?
Yeah.
So the 2 is, of course, squared. Now, when they measured the speed of light, then they were able to determine that light travels at 299,000 miles. 299,000 meters. That's about half of what you can hold your hands out for most people. 299,000 meters per second. 299,000 meters per second. That's what you call fast. That's why, when I was growing up, we used to talk about Superman. Faster than a speeding bullet. Faster than a moving train. Because all these were very conceivable things. You know what they never said? Faster than the speed of light. I think the new one does, but pooey, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's why when people say, boy, that's moving at faster than the speed of light, we are posing to you that light does not travel. The gospel itself and God and creation would say that light does not travel. It is instantaneous. It is present at the point of inception, and it is present at the point of interaction. The blackness of space, we'll go into this much more, but the blackness of space should tell us that light does not travel. Now, I know the reasons they give for it, and we will address those. But just think of that. There is, if you put a light at the end of a vacuum, if you had a vacuum tube, 8 inches around, you sealed that off. Somehow you were able to vacate all of the atmosphere from that, and you made it a true vacuum. If you had hooked up to one end of it a flashlight, let's say that this tube, this vacuum, would go all the way across a football field. And at the end of it, you had it closed off with something white that was facing the light. That light would show up at the flashlight, but if you're expecting light to be across the football field, you're going to be very disappointed. It is not going to show up anywhere in the vacuum. It is going to show up on the white piece of paper. So, and these things have been done. They know this. Now, sound is a bit different. Sound, if it happens in a vacuum, if a tree falls in the forest, all right. So sound happens in a vacuum. Sound does not happen. If you had a bell in the vacuum of space, well, let's take that same little vacuum space across the football field, and you seal off an 8-inch tube, you vacate it of all atmosphere, and you had a little bell just inside of it and some way to ring it by electromagnetic or something. If you had something in there to listen to that bell, guess what? No sound. So a bell does not give sound, even though light travels, even though sound travels. But sound has to travel through a medium. And so there is no sound in space. There is no sound because there is no medium. And if light travels, then where is it in space? It's just not there. It's black. It's the blackness of space. You'll hear it many, many times. The blackness of space. Now we're talking about black holes, which some of them are larger than our solar system. But let me assure you, they've never been seen. They cannot be repeated. They are not observable. They're not verifiable. We will explain in other sessions why.
So the speed of light, just make sure I'm on the same page here. The speed of light has never been measured. The only thing they've been able to measure is the reflection.
Is the return. Yes, it is. It's encounter. They totally discount the encounter time, the interaction time that it may take, which we know that it does. Light does consume time on interaction. Now, light does not absorb. So it's not taking all of these colors in, because if color is light and light is color, then color would be absorbing into my painting here. And that it's rejecting the red. No, the red is just manifesting because of interaction with light. I've tried to state that for about 30 years about how color shows up on things. And I've told people this, and it blows their minds. And I just thought it was so incredible. Well, yeah, you see that red cup there? That cup's not red. What? Yeah, no, the cup's not red at all. That cup is only, that's one of the parts of the color spectrum that of all the colors that that cup is rejecting red. So, and it's like, it's mystical. I mean, tell you, it gets to the point of mystical. It's rejecting red and has absorbed all the other colors. Now, that is a definition. The question is the definition correct? Is that, can we repeat that every time? Every time. But you see, the definition is either true or untrue. Now, the definition of that can only be determined if light travels. Those definitions, multiple definitions, can come out of a false identification of what is actually happening. Is my red cup and my red jacket here on my ancestor, on this painting, is it interacting with light or is it rejecting light? Is it absorbing all other colors, or is the only color that light is interacting with is the pigmentation and the geometrics of that certain pigment to be able to manifest or to reveal red? Is it revealing red or is it rejecting red? So
which one says what? So what is Einstein's theory? It says that it's rejecting red.
Yes.
And the immediacy of light says that red is the one that's interacting.
It's interacting at the point of contact. And also, now within the E equals MC squared doesn't directly say that, but what you're asking about is the C squared. Now let's take the speed of light. It has been determined we're saying without proper verification, and you've got to stop and remember, there is a reason that from Newtonian physics forward, everything is theoretical physics. I might add that it's philosophical, theatrical, theoretical physics.
Theatrical. Da-da-da-da.
Yeah. Well, watch them sometime on YouTube. It's like da 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 da. Yeah, this is true. Da 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 da. Watch me. Da 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 da. Don't question me. Da 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 da. Watch me. And it's a stage show, folks. And they don't like questions. They chafe. They chide. They belittle. They absolutely marginalize and dismiss people. Number one, this is one of the reasons it's got to be resolved, folks. If Einstein is right, the gospel is wrong. Now if the gospel's wrong, the gospel's wrong. We will accept that, right? Because I don't want to be doing something that doesn't have any basis in truth. We're only involved in this for the basis of truth. I don't preach the gospel because I found something new. I teach and preach the gospel, and Daniel does, because we know it is truth. We can tell you why it is truth. We can tell you its ontology. We can tell you all of its eschatology. And we can tell you the epistemology as to how we know these things. And the way that Sir Isaac Newton was able to know what he knew was based almost solely in the Hebrew scriptures. It's quite phenomenal. So, and he had his own test that he was doing there in his lab and in his workspace. So C squared. Now here is the C squared thing. Energy can turn into mass, and mass can turn into energy, which that in and of itself completely defies the most fundamental law of physics, and that is matter cannot be destroyed. And what E equals mc squared is saying that mass becomes something else. Now, you talk about getting into a belief system. This is where the belief system, number one, the speed of light is a belief system. It has never been verified, can't be verified, and especially when they're ignoring the issue of interaction. The mass turning into energy, that, in fact, everything that you see about that is completely the opposite. Mass doesn't turn into energy. Mass releases the containment of energy. All mass contains energy. Let's use a log on the fire. We're going to go back to the C2 just a moment. Let's take a log on the fire because we've got to see how this became so wrong. If you put a log on a fire and you ignite and there's chemical reaction that takes place and the log begins to burn, it is a known fact that there is not one part of, if my whole house burned down, I've said this before in the last few years, if my whole house burned down, nothing about it would be missing. It would be transformed and it would be converted into some other form. Ash, smoke, whatever's in the smoke, whatever lands other places, no telling how far away. My house could end up over hundreds of miles from here. But there's not any part of the mass that is missing. Yet, look at all of the energy that came out of the fire. Mm-hmm. Vastly more energy. So best stick to our log. So we've got the log on the fire. We're in a room. The room is 20 by 40. We've got a nice fire going. It's 32 degrees outside, but the fire is going and it is designed well to where that it emits heat instead of sends it all up the chimney. We're going to warm up a space that is 20 by 40 by 20 by 40. So we've got this box. The entire volume of that is going to experience the heat, the energy that comes from the log. The log is 6 inches across, 4 inches deep, and 12 inches long. That's the volume of the mass. But look at the volume of the energy. Mm-hmm. The energy is immensely bigger than the mass. Now, that is what Einstein is pointing out, but he says that mass turns into energy. And the mass is laying there in your ash bin, and the smoke, part of it's stuck to your chimney. The rest of it's laying on your roof. Part of it's probably 10 miles away. But none of that log has lost mass. Mass does not lose mass. Mass does not turn into energy. And that is what E equals mc squared. We'll get much, I didn't intend to get this far into it, but it almost requires that we get a little bit of working knowledge of this up front. The C2, so that is light squared. Now, let me give you the number. When you square 299,000 miles per meter, not mile, per meter. When you square that, This is the number. 89 quadrillion meters per second squared. That's how fast it is when you square the speed of light. That is not observable. And I promise you that is not observable by anyone. But see, he placed the number, he squared it to such a degree that nobody could prove it wrong. It is not what they call falsifiable because it's just too big. And everybody just surrenders and says, raise the roof. Whoop, whoop, you know.
So the picture of the log and energy and mass, what does the light equation have to do with that?
The light equation has to do with the speed of light. And he is saying that mass turns into energy at the speed of light. So maybe he is saying that at a certain speed, energy, it's not the log anymore. It's just, bam, we've got something turning into something else. So maybe it's the sped up process. I will look into that, which is most likely what he's trying to say. But here is the problem. So he says that it takes the speed of light to split an atom squared. The problem is we have nuclear waste. Just like you have ashes, you have nuclear waste. What is that? That's parts of the atom that disintegrated and burst open. That's called containment failure. You're going to have to remember that term. Jot it down if you're listening to us. Containment failure. That container didn't turn into energy. That container failed. Now, when we take this back to the gospel, let's keep ourselves gospel-centered here. What happened at the cross? Jesus was righteousness. Jesus is the light of the world. Yeshua, sorry, Lisa. Yeshua is the light of the world. Yeshua is righteousness. Yeshua is holiness. Yeshua is perfection. And what happened at the cross? Containment failure.
Oh, that's good. I'm going to get Pentecostal, I think.
I'm telling you. Shira Shanda Bobai. Containment failure. But here's the thing. See, containment failure in an atom is fission. That's what happens at the nuclear power plant. That's fission. That's when the atom is broken open and its life inside is released. Everything in the atom is released and it produces immense more energy than its volume. But you can understand that just with the simple log, right? How is energy bigger than mass? Log on fire, heat in room, right? So obviously it's far bigger. And it can be very, very destructive, as we've seen with the atom. But what they're trying to do, and this is just so awe-inspiring. So what they have done last year is fusion. Fusion is what happens on the sun. Fusion is not when you split an atom open. It's when you force them where atoms are not wanting, a different kind of atom is not wanting to clump together with another atom, even though they're all atoms. They all operate like stars and stuff. They are apart. It's almost like a gravitational pull. And we are going to go into that there is a gravitational pull that keeps them apart and close. See, gravity doesn't just keep our planet and our solar system apart, it keeps it close.
Mm.
It does both at the same time. So, so remember, fission is when you break the containment open, and fusion is when you don't break it open, you seal it together and it becomes more power, and that power is perpetual and never ceases. Now, there's environment in which that stays that way. I am not a physicist, folks. I'm not a nuclear physicist. However, I want you to know that I have spoken with one of the world's foremost nuclear physicists on this matter. And I am not speaking from my knowledge. I'm speaking from the knowledge of a world-renowned nuclear physicist who has worked on the CERN Super Collider, who has worked on every free nation's nuclear energy program.
Mm.
We'll tell you all about that another day. So what happens in this production of energy is created when the atom is split, but energy is perpetuated without stopping when atoms are forced to clump together as one. When all atoms come together as one, they are self-perpetuating energy. What happened at the cross?
Mm. All atoms, A-D.
all atoms, the last atom released the containment. The containment of righteousness, holiness, perfection, containment failure in the death of the body of Jesus Christ. But the thing that happened immediately at the point of resurrection is not fission, but fusion.
Mm.
And he brought all atoms and clumped us all together as one.
And there's no delay. There's no speed of that light.
No, there is no
It was
speed.
immediate, and the result of that is the immediacy of righteousness.
The immediacy of righteousness, which we've been telling you about. And now we can say to you that that same principle applies to light. Now, what has happened, folks? There's an urgency to this. This is not just we're either right or we're wrong. If Einstein is wrong, we're going to have more school shootings. What did he say? I said, if Einstein is right, if Neil deGrasse Tyson is right, we are going to have more school shootings. Because the Big Bang Theory is what comes out of this. And they started teaching in our high schools and in our colleges, at least here in America. I don't know about the rest of the world. I don't have time to study the whole world. They started teaching in high school in the early 90s that these students were made to be known that this is science. You came from nothing. It was a big bang. You are nothing. And the Japanese guy, I will learn his name correctly, but the Japanese guy says that you are nothing more than a particle of space dust.
Jeez.
So you've got kids going through school being taught that they came from nothing. They are absolutely nothing. And that this is all going to end in what is called heat death.
Mm.
Heat death. Christians got all excited when Einstein decided that this was all going to end in heat death because, hey, it's like the Bible says, it's all going to end in fire. You know? I'm sorry I turned into a hillbilly.
Fire.
Fire. Fire. There you go. All you got to do is sing a song. Can you imagine trying to sing that thing? Fire. It even makes a hillbilly talk right? So, If you learn to sing, you can learn how to talk. But unless you're listening to country, oh, no, I can't say that. But the heat death is the death of heat. It's not that we are going to burn up. It's that we are going to freeze to death. And that's the end of it. And we're going to explain to you how they took the second law, a law of thermodynamics that Newton made clear is an earth-bound law, and they threw it over the whole universe. Now, you've learned a lot, and we're at, around an hour and 30 minutes. This is but this is the inauguration of changing this world, redeeming what was lost, not in a cross sense, but in a knowledge sense. We are not establishing a new truth. We are restoring the truth that has always been here. In the beginning, God said, "Let there be light," and it was. The Hebrew shows no delay. The Hebrew in there says instantaneous. The Hebrew in Genesis 1 describes that light does not travel. It is at its source and at its point of interaction. So a lot of information here today. This is something that we have been preparing for, and I hope that we have explained enough to where that it's captured your imagination. It has not answered all your questions because we've not addressed all that we even know. It's going to take many, 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 many more sessions to address the details of this. But by the time we get to the details, they'll be there waiting for you and I and Daniel at the point of encounter. And these things aren't traveling. They're just there waiting for the moment of encounter. And that's what knowledge is. Knowledge doesn't travel. Knowledge is just waiting for a point to encounter. And so, Daniel, is there anything of what we've said that I failed? No, I did answer that. Light squared at the speed of light squared is 98 quadrillion meters per second, square it again.
My goodness. No, at this point, Michael, you have made it clear to me, and my understanding is growing and developing in this. I do want to take a moment and just remind everybody that we are also sending out this content via newsletter. And if you've been getting that, you are light years ahead of some of the others because of some of the content that's already out there. So don't miss that. If you're not on the newsletter list, make sure you go to gospelrevolution.com. Hit the newsletter link right there. A screen will pop up. All you got to do is put your name and your email address in, and you will get these at the current moment, at the current speed of light. We are sending these out about every other day. So you're getting about 3 to 4 per week, alongside of our normal content that comes out with the podcast and the weekly newsletter that comes there too.
These newsletters, folks, if we know this is right, we're ready to be proven wrong. We don't teach anything unless we already know we're right. We have been very quick to say, oops, we did it again. But right now, this has been, like I said, I'm not doing this just on the whim of Mike Williams. I've thought about these things since I was 10 years old. I have never, ever embraced E=mc². I don't know why. It's nothing spiritual about it, but I've always questioned it. The instantaneousness of light, it's just logical. It's reasonable and it's rational. It's repeatable. It's definable. You say, but I was at the fair and they shot this beam of light into the air and you could just see that beam just going right through space. No, what you were seeing is the particles that were in the atmosphere that were reflecting the light.
Mm.
And otherwise, you would not see that at all. We've all seen the movies, the big searchlights looking for the planes in the sky and, at the fairgrounds and all of this. And you can see that. So but that is an illusion. What you are seeing is light interacting, not light traveling.
And so it is. We must leave you, family and friends. If you'd like to know anything about the Gospel Revolution, then call our office on
832-318-9339.
And speak to us about how you want to participate. Or go to www.gospelrevolution.com and hit the connect link. You can find us on your favorite social media network, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Please be sure to hit that subscribe, share, and like button on whatever platform you are listening. Now it's good night from Daniel Rouse in the frozen tundra.
And it's good night from Michael Williams right here in Clarksville. And we did not tell you, this day will go down in history, folks. This will be a very historic day, Father's Day, June 15th, 2025. This will be the beginning of another revolution. And it is still a gospel revolution. But this revolution is for theoretical physics. We are going to approach it in all of its theory, and we are going to show to you. And at this point, it is our point to prove to you that theoretical physics, no matter how intimidating, no matter how shaming the people are who present this as fact, we are telling you there is no fact. It is not repeatable. It is not verifiable. It is not viewable.
We sure hope you enjoyed today's Powercast. And remember, we'll be here to do the same thing all over again next week. Only,
woo, better.
Since you're knocking on the door, you're begging to come in, yeah. Unaware that all the while love's been knocking from within. You are the love you see. A perfect yet unique, righteous, holy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. When you feel lost and alone, staring at the unknown, and these words be the compass that guides you right home. We are one, we are love, we are. Know where you gotta be, nothing to complete. It's not a thing that you need, you're the love. Just remember to breathe and take a second off. Look, I'm just trying to remind you that you're perfectly divine, flawlessly designed. When you're lost and alone, staring at the unknown, let these words be the compass that guides you back home. We are one, we are love, we are. Yeah, yeah. We are love.
Deconstructing religion and barbecuing the sacred cows of Christianity before your very eyes. You are listening to
The Gospel Revolution.